Hello and welcome or welcome back to another episode of Shoulders Down. My name is Leah. I am a registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor, and I'm the host of the show, Shoulders Down, where I'm here to help you stop thinking about food 24/7 and make peace with your body so you can live your most aligned and fulfilling life. In today's episode, we are going to talk about values. I'm going to start by talking about how diet culture can sneakily co-opt our values. And then I will share a personal story from when I worked at Panera and how this relates to values alignment. I will share some tools for how to know if you're acting in alignment with your values. And then I'll give you a little assignment, a little homework that you can do if you want to work on living in alignment with your values. And we'll talk about how all of this relates to body image and confidence. So, with that, we'll dive right into today's episode. So, today we're talking about values, and I want to start by making it really clear like why this matters and how this relates to intuitive eating and body image work. When we are living in diet culture, or when we're subscribing to diet culture, which is sometimes conscious but often unconscious, we end up living by values that aren't our own. They are values that we've internalized or values that have been handed to us by the media, by family, by someone else. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're values that we authentically align with. So, why do values matter? Well, when it comes to body image work, so often we think that the work lies in our actual body and our appearance. But from what I have seen from my training and from working with over 100 clients at this point, is that body image is actually so much more about other things, and our values are one of those things. So when we are living out of alignment with our values, when we're acting in ways that don't feel authentic or aligned with who we really are, that can actually lead us to feel yucky in our bodies or to feel like our confidence is lower because it's almost like this feeling of like rotting from the inside. Like, ooh, I just feel so yucky. I just feel like that's not, it doesn't feel like what I want to be doing, how I want to be showing up in the world. And that can lead us to, again, lowered confidence or just this overall feeling of like lack of resonance and yuckiness, for lack of a better word, in our bodies. And that feeling can make it harder to show up, can make us feel less confident in our bodies, even though it's not about appearance, it's about like the energy that radiates out of you based on the way that you're living your life. So values matter because if we live intentionally in alignment with our values, it is something that we can do to increase our confidence and increase our body image, our self-esteem, the way we see ourselves and the way we feel about ourselves. It is something we can do that is not trying to manipulate the size or shape of our body because if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you probably know that those changes aren't sustainable, which is why I don't recommend going down that road of trying to manipulate the size and shape of your body, because we know that 95% of the time it results in gaining all the weight back or often gaining more weight back. We also know that oftentimes people make the physical body changes and still don't feel great about themselves because they haven't done the internal work, like identifying and living in alignment with their values, along with all other kinds of internal work. Because deep-rooted, sustainable confidence is never going to come from the appearance of your vessel, we want to look at other ways we can derive confidence. And one of those ways, one of the major things I work on with clients is deriving confidence from the way that you show up in the world, who you are, and what you stand for. And our values are a really big guiding light when it comes to figuring out who we are and what we stand for. So this is why values are important. Research shows that living a values-aligned life can help increase confidence and sense of self and also resilience, which I think is really cool because we live in a world that is so image-centric and fat phobia is real, weight stigma is real, increased power and privilege based on appearance is real. And that freaking sucks. It's so awful and disgusting. And we cannot necessarily change that. Like, I mean, hopefully one day, hopefully that will change. And you being here, listening to this podcast and educating yourself on that, on the problems with our current culture is part of that change. But in the meantime, we can work on resilience. We can't avoid the fact that weight stigma is going to happen, that beauty standards are real and they impact opportunity and privilege and power, but we can work on resilience. So, okay, this sucks. This is awful. And if you know who you are and what you stand for, it doesn't take away the pain and the grief of feeling like the world isn't accepting of your body or your appearance or other identities, but it can help massively with being able to get back up and know like that was awful and disgusting. And I know who I am and what I stand for. That can help you to stay grounded and continue moving forward. So, why we're here, why we're talking about values, research shows that values aligned living not only helps derive a sustainable source of confidence that is not dependent on the size or shape of your vessel, of your body, but living a values aligned life also helps with resilience. Now, for this next part of the episode, I want to talk about something that happens quite a bit when I'm working with clients, and I'll weave in a personal story here as well. In my work with clients, I'll often hear them say something like, I'm so embarrassed that I'm even thinking this thought. That, like, sometimes clients will say, like, yeah, when I see a larger person out in the world, I do think, oh, they're lazy, or, oh, like, I assume certain things about their motivation level or their economic status or any of these other things based on their size. And my clients will often say, like, I hate that. I hate that that's the way I'm thinking, but also, if I'm being honest, that's the way I'm thinking. And we talk about how it's not their fault that this is how they're thinking. It's a result of the programming from diet culture. It's a result from the way that things are portrayed in the media, often really, really subconscious messaging that gets us to link these types of things like body size with character traits like laziness for as just one example. But with my clients, we talk about like part of the reason this feels so yucky is because it's not true to who they are at their core. The person they are at their core doesn't think that body size determines character traits, but it's something that's taken over them. And that feeling is so not agreeing with the part of them that is their authentic self. So, this is a sign that there's a value misalignment happening. And I have a personal story of feeling the value misalignment when I myself was in the throes of dieting and diet culture. I was working at Panera Bread. I worked there for 5 years, starting, I believe, junior year of high school and into, I guess, maybe junior year of college. And it was interesting because I worked there starting when I had disordered eating, which is actually interesting because I feel like part of the reason I probably sought out a food related job, like working at a fast casual restaurant, was related to the restriction that I was doing leading to obsession with food. Like I just wanted to like think about food and be around food as a result of the obsession with food, which of course I could not have identified then, but now it's like quite clear to me that that is probably what was going on some level. So I was a cashier and I was in the throes of dieting. Like it was like I only would order one thing on the menu, even though I could get like anything on the menu as my like staff meal or whatever, because I was just so restricted. And my whole shift was spent basically plotting how to like have a piece of a chocolate chip cookie without overdoing it and eating the whole thing and feeling awful about myself. Like it was just so consuming. Now, when I was on the cash register, and this is like very difficult for me to admit, but I think it's really relevant for this topic, so I'll share it for the sake of education. When I was on the cash register, I would judge people's orders. Someone would come up, I would look at them, and then they would order whatever they ordered, and I would judge them. A- And that on some level at the time, even though I was in the throes of it, I knew that that was like so wrong and so not me, but it was like I had no control over it. And I kind of didn't. It was like diet culture took the wheel. The diet part of myself took the wheel and was steering. And the like authentic, values aligned, grounded Leah was like in the back of the bus, like tied up and like couldn't get to the front to steer because she was not the one who was calling the shots back then. It was this like disordered, diety version of me. And of course, through my years working at Panera, I ended up learning about intuitive eating, doing my own work on healing my relationship with food, and actually saw how eventually, when I would take orders, I just didn't even have a thought in my brain about, oh, that person's ordering that, ooh, because it just wasn't something that I myself was self-conscious of, my own eating and eating decisions and body image. So it wasn't something that I was then projecting outwards in the form of judgment about others and their food choices and their appearance. So I share that example because it's one of the most potent memories for me of judgment coming from a values misalignment. Now, if you're listening to this, I want you to think about like, have you felt judgmental? Have you looked at your friends and thought like, ooh, well, like she's bigger than me and ooh, she's eating that? Or have you scanned random strangers in public and made judgments about their body size or their food choices? If you have, I want you to have compassion for yourself. It doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. If anything, it's just information about the things that you're insecure about. And this goes for other things besides like food and body size. Like if you are insecure about your skin, you're going to notice other people's skin more. If you are insecure about, having, I don't know, thinning hair, you're going to notice other people's hair more. It's like you notice the thing, you see the world through the lens of your own insecurities, and that's just how projection works. And it's okay. We can have compassion for ourselves and know this isn't actually who I am. This is a product of the season of life I'm in where I'm self-conscious about food and body image and exercise choices or whatever. Okay, now I want to talk to you about how to identify when something is out of alignment with your authentic values. So there are a couple ways to do this, but one of the ways I like the most is using the question, would you say that to a friend? So for example, in my work with clients, we do a lot of getting down to the core belief work. So if a client comes to me and says something like, I don't like the way my stomach looks, it's flabby, it's not toned, I might ask them, what's so bad about a flabby stomach? And they might say something like, oh, well, it's just not cute, it's not attractive. And I then might say something to them like, well, what's so bad about not having a cute stomach? And they might say something like, well, it means like I'm not attractive, I'm not valid according to society's standards. And again, I might say something like, okay, well, if you aren't attractive or valid according to society's standards, what do you believe that means about you? And they might say something like, well, that would mean that I'm not worthy of love. So this cascade of starting with like an initial body insecurity and get going down and down and down and down until you get to like what's really going on underneath the surface, that is called core belief work, where we're trying to figure out like what is the core belief driving this feeling underneath all of it. So in this case, which is actually a real client example, the core belief is I'm not worthy of love. And so that comes from, all the way at the tip of the iceberg, at the very top was my stomach is flabby and not toned. And so we can ask, like, do you agree with that? Do you agree? Would you say it to a friend? If a friend had a stomach that was quote unquote flabby and not toned, would you say that that means that your friend is not worthy of love? Now, most people can say, absolutely not. Like, that is absolutely not true. A person is worthy of love, regardless of whether or not their stomach is toned or not. And in some cases, a client might say to me, well, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, but like, I low-key believe that's true. I low-key believe that appearance determines whether or not someone is worthy of love. Now, from there, if that's what's happening for you, we can ask, like, is that how you want to operate? Is that how you want, is the belief you want to have? And then usually clients are able to be like, no, I hate that I believe that. It feels so gross. I don't want to think that a person's worth is determined on their appearance. So that's a way that we know. if you wouldn't say it to a friend, or if you wouldn't think it about a friend, or if you would think it about a friend, but you're not proud of it and it's not what you would want to think about a friend, that's how we know that this is not in alignment with your values. It's the litmus test. Another example here, say someone's like, actually, this is another real client example, right? I had a client say, I have to get some form of exercise every single day. And I asked her, what would be so bad about not exercising for a day? And she said, well, that would mean I'm unproductive and lazy. And I asked her, if people think you're unproductive and lazy, what do you believe that would mean about you? And she said, well, then I believe that would mean that I'm not worthy or deserving of rest. And so then we looked at that like, would you say that to a friend, right? Like, would you tell a friend you're not deserving of rest? You're not worthy of rest. You have to be productive and exercise every single day. And right, most people are able to say, like, no, that's not how I would talk to a friend. You know, my friend deserves rest just because she's a human and she's inherently worthy of rest. So asking, would you say it to a friend can be a really powerful way to kind of get out of the personalization of it and look and see, like, is that how you would treat someone else? Is that how you'd want to treat somebody else? Now, once we identify, like, no, 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 this is not in alignment with my values, we want to identify, okay, if my values are not, judging people based on appearance or um, feeling like people have to hustle all the time and they're not ever worthy of rest. If those aren't my values and those are clearly society's values, diet culture's values, whatever it is, then we need to figure out what are your values. Because if we're trying to move you away from acting in alignment with these values that feel yucky and don't feel authentic to you, we need to replace them with what are you trying to live in alignment with instead. And that is where the values activity comes in. So I love to do this with all my clients, and it's something that you can do yourself too. I invite you to do this. You can Google just a values list. I use Brene Brown's values list. And the first step is looking at all the values and starring any of them that you connect with or feel relevant to your life at all. And the next step is doing a second pass through, narrowing it down to just your top three values. And what's important to know is values change at different seasons of life, right? Like what you value when you're in college versus when you're like a young professional or when you have a family or when you're older, like all these different seasons of life can bring different values to the surface. So know that when you pick your top three values, it's not like they're set in stone. They're just what they are right now. And the reason we're narrowing it down to three is because in order to practice values aligned living, we want to be able to easily check in with, am I living in alignment with these values? If we have a list that's like seven, eight values long, it's going to be much harder to check in with that many things, but it's much more realistic to check in with three different values. So then after you have your top three values, we want to answer these three questions for each value. And those questions are, firstly, what does this word mean to me? Because every value means something different depending on the person defining it. For example, authenticity means something to me than it means to you. The next question is, how do I already live in alignment with this value? And then you can start to think of examples of how you're already living in alignment with this value. And what that does is it helps to build a little confidence, a little momentum of like, yeah, there are some things I do that are in alignment with this value. And then the third question is, how can I expand and practice living in alignment with this value even more? And this helps to get your brain thinking of opportunities to practice values aligned living in other places. Those three questions you answer for each value, and that is your homework. So I'll give you an example. For myself, my top three values, at least at this season of life, honestly, for the last couple of years, they've been the same. Those values are play, authenticity, and connection. It's funny, I'm saying those and I'm like, actually, I feel like those are kind of older values for me, like from a previous season of life. and they don't fully feel true. Like as I'm saying them out loud, I'm like, of course I value those three things, but it feels like a different three words might better capture where I'm at right now. So I'm actually going to do this live. I'm going to go to the Brene Brown value list and see. Yeah, I think I would change it to play, connection, and instead of authenticity, what feels more true and resonant for me right now is I think, this is crazy. I think it's risk taking. That's what feels true. And that mostly has to do with risk taking in my business, or maybe it's growth, something like that. I would play with this more. But just to give you an example of how values can change in different seasons, it feels like one of mine has changed. Not that I don't value authenticity anymore, but it doesn't feel like the most potent one to capture where I'm at in this season. So, once you have your three values and you answer those three questions for each value, what does this mean? How do I already live through this value? How can I expand and live through this value even more? Then you have those in a little filing cabinet in your brain. And when you go out into the world and live your life, you can start to look for little opportunities, little openings to practice living in alignment with those values. And it might not seem immediately connected to body image and confidence, but every time you do something that's in alignment with your values, it's like dropping a marble in a jar. And over time, you build up like a big jar of marbles, and that's like your confidence well, and this sense of inner peace and knowing that, yeah, I am living in my life in a way that feels true to me, in a way that feels in alignment with the things that actually matter to me, instead of sort of like unconsciously going with the flow of the universe and being pushed in the direction of marketing and messaging and patriarchy and diet culture and sort of unconsciously living a life that's in alignment with values that you don't even care about. In fact, you probably strongly disagree with on a moral level because diet culture's values are rooted in racism, ableism, sizeism, and for most of my community, they're like, ew, hell no, that's not the kind of things that I want to practice. So having your values can really add a nice little something to your life of like, ooh, I know myself. That feels good. And I want to set expectations like this isn't going to take away tearing apart your closet when you're trying to get ready for something, or like, a body image spiral when you're catching a glimpse of yourself in the mirror. Those things are still going to happen. But when those things happen, if you can reground in, like for me, okay, say that happens and I'm like, yeah, like say I'm getting dressed and I'm like, oh, I don't really like the way I'm looking today, and that's kind of a bummer. It's not going to take away that pain of that body image distress. However, the way I would use my values in that moment might sound something like, this is a bummer. It's valid to feel distressed about my body. And I'm working on centering my values right now. My values are connection, risk-taking, and play. And I'm just gonna put on an outfit so I can go out, hang out with my friends, experience connection. I know that ultimately this outfit isn't like making or breaking connection. Or another way to frame that might be like a value of mine is risk taking. And I want to wear the riskier outfit to practice that value, even if it challenges some of my body image concerns or something. Those are some examples of how you might lean on your values to help with that resilience and to help when you're feeling down on your body or on your relationship with food journey. It can even apply there. Like, say you're like, ugh, I really want dessert, but I feel like I shouldn't have it. I feel like I'm not like deserving of having it. The way you might use your values there is like, okay, my values right now are for me, connection, play, and risk taking. So for me, I mean, that's hard because that's not really something that I experience right now because I'm deeper in this work. But just as an example, it might be like, I want to prioritize connection and going to get ice cream and having this dessert with my partner, with a friend, or with myself feels like a lovely way to practice connecting with myself or connecting with my loved ones. And like, that's the kind of life I want to live. These are some examples of what it can look like. So you can head to the link in the show notes and download a little worksheet that I have on values that comes from my course, actually. There's a whole module in my course, which is called The Return. It's my whole self-paced proven method for food freedom and body peace. that is available for purchase at any time. And the link to purchase that is in the show notes. It's called The Return, but I'm giving you the values part of the course, just the values worksheet, not the video and other content. I'm giving you that as a free little bonus for being here and being a podcast listener. You can download that via the link in the show notes. So, to recap, today we talked about what are values, why they matter when it comes to body image and confidence, the ways in which diet culture can lead us to living out of alignment with our values, and how that impacts the way we show up in the world and the way we feel about ourselves. We talked about how to identify when you are living out of alignment with your values. And then we talked about an exercise you can do to identify your values and intentionally start practicing living through those values. This is such a major key. Truly, values is one of the most important pieces, I think, in the work I do with clients. So I am so happy to be offering this to you, dear podcast listener. I hope you get value from this values episode. And I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for listening. I will see you in our next episode.